Millions of people each year fall deeper and deeper into credit card debt. It's a sad but familiar story. Stop credit card debt right now. You can do it, and we're going to show you how next on In the Money. Hello everyone and welcome back to In the Money. We're glad you're able to join us this evening. We have a great show planned for you this evening. Let's get right down to showing you our agenda and tell you what's coming up tonight on In the Money. Tonight on In the Money, we have the In the Money mailbag. This is a popular question which has come in over the last week or so, which tonight is going to be on our Roth IRA, which was our last show. What's happening in your area will be next. Several seminars and programs that are happening in a town or area near you. We'll show you about them. We'll tell you where they are. Next, we're going to have a special guest on tonight, a credit card debt expert, Scott Bilker. I'll be introducing him momentarily, telling us about credit card debt warning signs. And then next, tips for debt relief, how to get out of those credit card deals, how to reduce your debt, reduce interest payments. And then lastly, we'll be taking all your financial calls and emails on any topic that you have later on into the show. If you have a question on any credit card debt question right now, tonight, you can call us up while we're live on the air. We'll have Scott Bilker here as well as myself to answer your questions on credit card debt. We'll be giving that to you shortly. When we come back, we're going to be introducing a very special guest to help manage your credit card debt. You ever wonder, are you paying too much on credit card debt? Want to manage it better? You want to know what charge card is best for you? We're going to have all that and a lot more right after these messages, so stick around. Hello, welcome back everyone. I'm your host, JJ Burns. Glad you're able to join us again on our credit card debt management program. I have with us tonight a very special guest who actually wrote a book on credit card debt management. His name is Scott Bilker, and I want to thank Scott for coming on and coming out here with us. How are you, Scott?
Very good. The pleasure's all mine. Thanks for inviting me onto your show, JJ.
Fantastic. I know we got a lot of information to discuss, and I want to invite our viewers on to join Scott and ask him or I a live question on the air. Right now, you can dial up 1-800-EXT-HELP. Our fax number is area code 516-596-0715. Again, our program tonight is on debt management, credit card debt, how to get out of it, how to get better credit cards, how to reduce your payments, basically, in general, how to do better financial planning regarding your charge cards. Okay, Scott, it's funny. When I go to the library, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, we did a seminar last week for Borders Books in Comac with extra help, and I spoke about credit card debt management. And when we get to Borders Books, we have the person who's there, the manager. She gets out and she brings a lot of different books about debt management. And I happened to be there a little bit early, went through all the books, wasn't able to really find good information on credit card debt management. Now, because we were preparing your show, I was able to read over your book. And by the way, Scott's book, Credit Card and Debt Management. We'll have a number for you on where you can purchase this book. It's a great book on basically how to choose a charge, everything that deals with charge cards. That's what it's basically good for. From credit card debt management to choosing a charge card to fees, everything. And I know we'll talk a lot about it. But what's interesting is that I couldn't find a book. And I came across your book, and the first thing that popped out to me is it gave me all the information that I was never able to find, and which is exactly what you told me when you first came onto the show. Why did you write the book? Well,
what happened was when I was in my early 20s, I was just finishing up college, and I needed some extra money to finish getting through school because that's very important, getting your degree. You don't want to go like 50% of the way and give up. So I needed to turn to my charge cards after my student loans were maxed out. And I didn't want to pay through the nose like 20% interest rates at the time, and they were very high.
Right.
And I went to the library, and just like you were saying, you know, it's hard to find a book dedicated just to getting the best credit deals. A lot of books have a lot of fluff in it about credit cards, but none that really get down to the exact details of how to locate the best credit card deal and how to manage the debt. So there was like a few pages in one book, a few pages in another book, but I wanted to have all that information right at my fingertips all the time. And I had to read a lot of books to really get all that information, and I kept notes over the years. And I've identified a lot of methods to save thousands of dollars when using credit cards. And friends and family have been asking me about this for a long time because I've been able to save them a lot of money, even in the case of like mortgages and refinances also.
Right. It's funny you should bring up that because, and I know we'll get to that momentarily, but charge cards, you really have to look at charge cards. And it's funny, you look at them a lot differently than most of us financial planners look at them. You're saying that there are deals, if you do the research enough, that there are deals out there that may actually be better to temporarily borrow from a charge card with the interest rates that you might get from those cards might actually be better than, in some cases, a home equity loan or going and getting another mortgage. And you really just got to do your research and stamp them out.
Yes, that's definitely true. You know, when you borrow money, you're buying a loan, and the fee for that's the interest and all the fees that are in there. And
application fees, points, origination fees, all those fees which a lot of people don't talk about. And of course, banks and mortgage companies don't want to talk about their fees, but those things you don't really think about really are not indicative of what charge cards are. I mean, you basically get a charge card and there's no application process really.
Right, and that's one of the nice things about it. Another nice thing is that they're open 24 hours a day, so when I get home and I'm paying my bills every other week, I can contact them. But when you're buying money and paying a fee for that money, the money itself is the same. It's not like shopping for a car or a microwave where you have to compare all the different things to come with it. Money is just green paper that you use to buy stuff.
That's a good point.
So it doesn't matter which bank you go to. What matters is how much it's going to cost you. So the best loan is the cheapest loan, and understanding how to compare credit offers is vital to keeping your finance charges low, because credit card companies benefit from consumers not knowing how to apply those options to their particular situation. And that's why in my book I provide worksheets and other simple methods that will help you quickly identify which deals are the best, so you can take the good deals and take the bad deals and throw them in the garbage can.
Let me ask you something. Why are more Americans borrowing against their financial futures?
Well, quite simply because they can. There's more than 500 million major credit cards in circulation, and that's just Discover, MasterCard, Visa, and American Express. Those major credit cards,
others.
Yeah, 500 million. I mean, if you put them end to end, they'd wrap around the earth plus a little more distance.
Wow.
Also, there's no stigma attached to using credit cards. It's almost prestigious to whip out the platinum card and pay for dinner.
Sure.
People feel rich when they have a lot of cards, and people aren't taking the time to figure out how much that television costs after they use their credit card to buy it. The $300 television might turn into a $600 television, which they really didn't want to spend.
Right.
And because they used their credit card, didn't pay attention, didn't get organized, didn't learn the basic fundamentals, which is what I outline in the book, it cost them a lot more.
I think it's a good point to make that if you can manage your debt efficiently, you have no debt. I mean, the best way to use a charge card is, like you said before, was you take your charge card, you buy your, for the sake of argument, a TV, and the next month you get your bill. In effect, you floated a loan for 30 days,
right,
with no interest.
Yes.
And then you've paid off your TV in full with no finance charges. I mean, that's the best way to use a charge card.
Absolutely. And what you can do is, even if you have existing debt, you should still use your credit card to make that purchase. And what you should do is, if you had the cash, say, to buy the TV, but say you had a loan at like 19%, a credit card with a high rate, you still buy the TV with the credit card, and you take the cash you had and pay back the high rate card during that time. So now your money that you had to spend anyway is basically earning you that 19% instead of costing you that 19%. By using that float, you're using, it's like a fee-free cash advance to pay back another high-rate card.
Let me ask you something real quickly. How can you lower your monthly payments and still save money on finance charges at the same time when you have that higher charge card? It's kind of what you just mentioned, but how can you really reduce those payments if you do have a high charge card?
Well, the key to, of course, all the costs of a loan is the interest rate, and that's going to be the bulk of the fee. So by shopping around for a lower rate, and when you have Well, for instance, say you had $6,000 at 20%.
Right.
By doing a little bit of shopping around, you can get a 10% deal, or even better. But to be conservative, let's say 10%. If you were paying $200 a month towards that $6,000 loan, by moving it to a 10% loan, you can drop your payments $80 a month, and
that's almost in half.
Right. And at the end of the loan, you'd still have paid back $600 less over the course of that loan. Of course, the best strategy would be to take the same $200 and pay back the debt at the lower rate, and that would save you even more money.
That's a good point to make, is actually make pretend, if you can find that lower charge card from, instead of paying 20% and your payment's $200 a month, you get a 10% card, your payment becomes $120. Make pretend you're paying the 20% card, but in effect pay more principal back, you'll reduce the debt that much further.
Yes, that's definitely the strategy to take, because when you have debt...
Prepay charge card debt, basically, is what
always.
It comes down to.
Because when you have debt, you have no savings. There's nothing you can do with the money. Your best investment is to take your money and pay back those debts as quickly as possible. And it's real important that you get to learn how to manage your debt before. It's easier to learn how to manage your debt than it will be, say, to go to a lawyer, because that's like the last step on the road to financial disaster.
Right.
So you want
a bankruptcy attorney.
Right. You want to contact someone like yourself for financial advice. You want to read some information like my book and other things in the library to learn about debt before you're going to the lawyer.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you said it perfectly, and I'm going to steal from you now, or I should say borrow. When you go to borrow money, you're buying money. How much does it cost for you to buy that chunk of money? If you're buying a television, if you're going to borrow and you need something, where is your best deal? It might, in some cases, and you really need to define your tax bracket and figure this out, it might pay in some instances to use the charge card borrowing privilege, especially if you have a plan, and that's the key that you outline in your book. You have worksheets and things like that you can outline to budget yourself out, to say, okay, if I need to borrow this money for a year, the 8% introductory rate in the charge card is better than the 10% equity loan deal I'm getting on my home equity loan, because I'm getting all these origination fees and application fees. It's cheaper for me to go charge card with a plan than to go equity loan for 15 years at 10%.
Right, but it could also change down the road. That credit card might raise the rates, and at that point you can still get the home equity loan. You just keep bouncing between the different ones. But it's important to know exactly how much each one costs you at every point in time, so you can get the maximum benefit. Instead of the lender taking advantage of you, you can get the best deal for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I know that you brought with you some warning signs on how we might be able to save ourselves from getting into trouble, or knowing when we're getting into that credit card debt area that we should be alerted to. What are some of the warning signs that we could be getting into trouble?
Okay, well, if you don't have enough money in the bank to pay the bills when they're due, that's certainly the first thing you're going to need to look at.
Okay, so the first thing is you don't have enough money in the bank to pay bills when they are due. That's the first warning sign of credit card debt.
Yes, and that points to a lot of different things. First of all, organization. You know, it's not a matter of budgeting just to spend money in different categories like clothing and travel, but it's important to make sure you can pay your bills when it's time to write the checks. There's nothing worse than saying, I have all these bills, how am I going to pay them this month? That's terrible, because when you pay late, they're going to raise your rate. Nowadays, you know.
And on top of it, when you pay your bill late, that's a mark against your credit, at least from what I can see. So if you pay a charge card bill late, that charge card company could report to a credit agency to say that you have a late payment on your credit, and now if you go to buy a house or some other major, a product or the only thing that comes to my mind is a house, that you're going to have a problem qualifying for the lowest possible rate in a mortgage, because you have a late payment on your credit cards.
Right, and it's a shame that has to happen just because you didn't plan in advance how much money has to be there. You know, when all your bills are there and you pay them and you're like, oh, there's $700 left over, let's go out. You don't want to do that. See, if you know how much has to be there in advance, you just make sure you at least can pay those minimum payments.
Okay. All right, let's get to the second one. You do not know the exact dollar value of your debt. That's interesting.
Well, if you don't know how much you owe, you certainly can't know how much you can afford to borrow, as far as new purchases. If you owe $10,000, some people don't even know how much they owe.
Well, a lot of people are flipping credit cards. They have 5 or 6 cards. They got 2,000 on this one, 1,000 on this one, 10,000 on this one, and they're, well, let me use this charge card. I haven't used this one in a while.
How can you form a plan to get out of debt when you don't even know how much you owe, how much you're going to pay per month? It's important to know what's your total debt, what's the weighted average interest rate, and I go into this in the book because how much you have at different rates.
So first thing, find out what your total debt is.
Yes.
In other words, you have, 3 charge cards, 2,000 on each one, that's $6,000. And then what do we do?
Well, and then they're all due at different dates, so you got to really make sure you track those. So once you know how much you owe, you want to look at how much you've been paying towards those debts.
And then you also want to find out what the interest rate is on each of those charge cards.
Right, but if you have, say, $1,000 at 19%, that's going to weigh more heavily than having $500 at 6.9. So
That's what you mean by weighted
average. Yeah, I talk about that in the
average.
book in my worksheet, so you can get an idea of taking all your loans and modeling them down into one easy to think about loan that has one amount that you owe, one amount you're paying, and with that and the rate, you can figure out how long you're going to be enslaved to that debt.
Okay.
You might figure out, oh man, I'm going to be in debt for 8 more years at this rate.
Or you can figure out that if this one's 19% and this one's 10%, and I have more debt on the 19% one, let me try to pay the minimum payment on the lower rate and more principal on the one that's 19%.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up because that's very important strategy, is paying the most money towards the highest interest rate. I've even seen in books where they talk about paying the most money towards the lowest balance, and that's not a good practice. It's pay the most money towards the highest rate. Believe it or not, I've actually seen that advice in print, and I talk about bad advice in my book also, stuff to stay away from.
What's some bad advice?
Bad advice would be to...
What are some things that people can you can say to them to say flat out, don't do that?
Don't try to save money when you when you have a lot of debt, because banks pay you very little for your savings account. If you had $3,000 in a savings account at 4%, and that would be really gracious, 4% for a savings account.
Right.
That would only bring you about $10 a month.
Right.
And if you owed that...
And by the way, for those viewers out there, I see a lot of that all the time. People come into my office. Again, it was a seminar last week, Borders Books, 30, 40 people there. People came up to me. They have $5,000 in the bank, and they say, well, that's for emergency money, but I have $10,000 in charge card debt. Well, I said, well, you'll have the charge cards, but take the money out of the savings account, pay off the charge cards. You'll still have the charge card. You can always go and get an emergency cash reserve from your charge card if there's an emergency, but at least you're not paying 20% in charge card payments.
I'm so glad that you say that, because I've actually read other financial planners say to keep the $5,000 in savings. You know, philosophies have changed. Maybe
Absolutely.
20 years ago it was great to have that, but nowadays, for certainly, in the 90s, you've got to save the most money possible. When you keep money in the bank, when you owe money to charge cards, you're paying a fee for the privilege of having that savings account.
Right.
And you could take that money that you're paying extra, the difference between the interest you're paying for the charge and the interest you're getting, and take that and pay your debt back faster.
Right.
You can actually save more money by doing that, because once you pay it back, then you can save real money.
Right. Let's go to your third warning sign that you could be getting into trouble. You have so many bills that you are writing checks every day.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem, because now you're inundated with your mail. You're like going into denial, and it's very hard to see, what to do here. The important thing is to come up with a plan that you know is going to be effective.
Right.
What you have to do is have a bill pay day, and I talk about this, again in the book.
Right.
You pick one day, and that's the day, and that's when you're going to handle all your bills. I mean, you open your mail every day just in case there's a little emergency in there.
That's one of the things that I picked up from your book, is that you have your bills, you take your bills, you put them into an unpaid bill file folder, or our little basket that we have here on the show.
Right.
And that's and when it comes the end of the month, or whatever day you pick to pay your bills, that's the day you go into your bin, and that's the day you pay your unpaid bills.
Right. That's the day you sit down and you pay them, and you continue to formulate your plan. You look at each one and you say, is this the best deal? If it's not, you give the bank a call. You call your other banks, and you make sure that you get the best deal on that day. And then the rest of the days, I do it every 2 weeks. And for the 13 days in between, it's beautiful. I don't have to write a single check. I don't have to think about money. Nowadays, I think about it all the time. But I don't have to think about my own personal bills during that time period.
Right.
just on that one day, and that's the beauty of it. So if you're writing checks every day,
concentrate on making money to pay the charge card debts back as
Yes.
opposed to worrying about it.
Exactly.
It's funny we should talk about that because there's actually a book that's out about worry causes more problems as opposed to thinking about other bigger and better things. So a little more psychological advice here on In the Money. Let's just review the 3 warning signs to help our viewers just prevent themselves from getting into a problem with charge card debt. The first one was you don't have enough money in the bank to pay bills when they are due. First warning sign. Second, you do not know the exact dollar value of your debt. Find out how much, basically you're saying how much money, how much debt do you have, how much is it costing you for that debt. The third warning sign is you have so many bills that you are writing checks every day. And the solve for that problem is pick a day, put your bills in an unpaid envelope or file folder, and pay your bills on a specified date that you have in the month.
right? Of course, there are more warning signs that you should be aware of. I list them also in my book. And when you pick that day to pay your bills, you want to make sure that you got them all. It's important to have another tracking organization system set up for those bills, which I talk about also, because if you don't get your credit card bill, don't rejoice, because if you don't get your bill and it's their fault and you still don't pay it, it's still going to be your fault and it's going to be late. So when you're looking down your list in these worksheets I have in there and you see you don't have one paid, you call them and say, hey, I didn't get my bill. I want you to send me the bill now, and I want you to mark right there on the computer now that I called to get that bill.
Good point. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more. Credit card and debt management with Scott Bilker. Want to know how to organize your charge card debt? Know how to get better rates in charge cards? We'll be talking about that when we come right back after this break, so stick around. Hello everyone, I'm your host, JJ Burns, Certified Financial Planner. Glad you're able to join us. We are talking with Scott Bilker about credit card debt, how to manage your debt better, how to get better charge cards, how to reduce those payments, effectively make your life better, and worry-free from debt. If you have a question, call us up live while we're on the air right now. Here's the phone number, 1-800-EXT-HELP. And our fax number is area code 516-596-0715. Call up right now and get yourself out of debt or get some advice on how to do a better job with managing your credit cards. Okay, Scott, thanks again for joining us. Scott is the author of Credit Card and Debt Management, Maximizing Your Borrowing Power. And if you'd like more information on how to get that book, you can call up 1-800-205-8254. Let me give you that number again. If you want to order this book, find out more information, 1-800 is the phone number, toll free, 1-800-205-8254. Very good book and very informative book, and I might say comprehensive, thorough enough for an old financial planner like me by trade to say it's a great book to go through your debt from A to Z, help you out on getting yourself under control and getting out of debt instead of going to the attorney, like you said before,
Right.
when it's the last step. Let's go to our first caller of the evening, who's Margaret. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, how are you today?
Good. How can we help you?
Okay, I wanted to find out, does it pay to credit card surf? Only because I have 2 cards that I've tried to call and lower the rate on, and the banks are really not that responsive to that.
Okay.
They don't want to lower the rate, and I pay on time and everything. So now I'm considering credit card surfing to a lower introductory rate of like 5.9, and I wanted to find out if it pays to do that for 6 months.
Okay, so basically you have a couple of charge cards now with high interest rates. It sounds like Margaret tried to go talk to the bank to negotiate that rate on her charge cards a little bit lower. Doesn't sound like she was successful, and now I guess she's saying her next option is to try to get another charge card.
Okay, well, Margaret, if you've already called the banks, if you don't have a deal breaker in your hand, if you have one of those low-rate credit offers you get in your mail, right in your hand, you can read it right to them. Say, look, I've got this deal right here, 5.9%. For 6 months. Can you do something like that for me? If not, I'm gone. I'll just transfer my balance here. You know, I pay on time. I'm a good customer, and any bank's going to be glad to have my business. Either you're going to make the profit or they're going to make the profit. You can choose. But then, if they don't do it, then you right away you actually credit surf, and you can save thousands of dollars by credit surfing. If you had a $3,000 charge,
credit surfing, by the way,
Right.
when you say credit surfing, well, I think about going out to California with my surfboard. But when you say credit surfing, just try to dial up different charge cards and say, I want to transfer my debt?
Right, well, it's taking advantage of every low-rate offer. I mean, I guess calling it credit surfing might give it a negative connotation, but really it's getting the best deal, you know, for your money.
Okay.
So if you had $3,000 at 19.8% and you were able to keep it down to 5.9 by surfing,
Right.
by continuously moving to 5.9,
Right.
you'd save $2,800 in interest charges.
So is it possible for Margaret, so what Margaret should do is basically she should call up her bank, be really firm, and say, look, this is my charge card debt. I can get 5.9% introductory rate somewhere else. Either you can reduce it to that or I walk.
Exactly.
And she walks if they don't do it.
I find that half the time, the banks I call when this happens to me, half of them lower the rate right away, and the other half tell me, okay, do what you have to do, and then I just go. And
Got it.
I have so many low-rate offers right now. I keep track of all this stuff because I'm into this. I've got over $47,000 worth of available credit at 5.9 until 1998.
That's tremendous.
So the deals are out there for everyone.
At 5.9%.
5.9%. I have much more available credit at a low rate than I can use. Of course, I could go buy a Porsche, but I couldn't pay it back. So that's the important thing to keep in mind is
Right.
you have all this buying power, don't use it because you know.
Right. Okay,
you're
Margaret,
in
thanks
trouble.
for your call. Certainly, there's a lot of deals out there you can take a look at. Let's go to the next caller, who is Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
How can we help?
I had gone bankrupt, and I have a credit card now with Discover Card, and I have about $3,000 debt on it, and I pay like $400 a month, you know, to try to pay it off. But I keep on using the card, and it keeps on going back up to close to $3,000. What is your suggestions?
Well, if spending is the problem, then that's a matter of personal discipline. And I don't like to get into telling people how to spend their money and what they should buy. But if you truly want to get rid of your debt, you're going to have to stop incurring any more debt. And we're going to get into some of those tips later. But since you filed for bankruptcy, you're not going to be able to do it again. In fact, it's ironic because credit card companies know this, and some of them feel you're a better risk after bankruptcy because you can't do it again.
Is that right?
Yep. So you're going to continue to get credit slowly but surely. So my suggestion would be, especially with a card like that, I don't know what your rate is, but it's probably quite high because of your bankruptcy. You would like to avoid using your charge cards as much as possible. If you can save and pay with cash, do it, and take all your money that you have, all your income, whatever you can do to pay that debt back faster, do it. Right now, since you've claimed bankruptcy, your primary goal is going to be to establish yourself as a good credit risk, so banks will lend you money in the future for a mortgage, for a car loan, for whatever you will
We don't
really
want
need.
Susan being late on her payments, wanting to pay those charge cards, but the best thing, it sounds like you're saying, is stop using that charge card and get ahead of the debt.
Yeah, you have to.
Certainly if she keeps charging, she's getting a higher average debt balance on her charge card, which is she's being assessed a higher amount of interest on that loan.
Right.
So, and I know one of the first things that you taught me from the book is to stop charging on the charge card. And that is because if you charge the very next day, that charge gets added to your average monthly balance of what your revolving debt is, which basically gives you a higher payment on your note, which increases your debt, which is exactly what you want to avoid.
Right, but of course there are situations like we talked about before where it's okay to do that when you're moving it to a lower rate and not getting any new debt. So it's something that has to be very carefully looked at, and you really have to spend some time learning about it, or it's going to cost you money if you don't.
Right. Let's go to your step-by-step formula for getting out of debt.
Okay.
The first thing you said that's coming up now is to start your way out of debt, stop incurring more debt.
Right, unless it's an emergency. Of course, if your car breaks down and you can't get to work and you have to charge it, well, that's one thing. But if you really like that gold Rolex, don't get it.
Okay. All right, next up, evaluate your financial condition.
Right, you have to get a plan. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, as the old saying goes.
Right.
So, and that's what my book is really about, getting that plan, a plan that you can use, a plan that will be successful.
Right, and what's great about planning, and you couldn't say it better to a financial planner, than once you have that plan in place, it's like building a house. Once you've designed the plan, you work the plan. You don't have to do anything else, you work the plan. And it's very easy after that. The hardest thing is getting the plan. Okay, so stop incurring more debt, evaluate your financial condition. Let's go to the next one on how to start getting out of debt. Keep your eye out for money-saving options. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is that you have to be aware that there are ways you can save money. You can call your credit card company. You can read all the offers you get in the mail, and we'll talk about also that in detail in a minute. But you just be aware that it's not over, and there are ways to save money. Keep that in your mind. There is hope.
Okay. Next, take action.
Right. No plan will work unless you actually follow through.
Good point. What about actually updating that plan? Is there ever a need to go back to the drawing board and say, well, I did something wrong, I really need to reevaluate this plan, I'm paying down on the wrong charge card, or I could be doing a better job? I mean, it sounds to me that this is something that's constantly evolving, that there's always a better deal out there. I mean, you said yourself, you use 40 or 45 different charge card companies that offer 5.9% that you're making yourself aware of. So it sounds like you always, those offers that come into the mail, that come to you by mail, it sounds to me that you shouldn't be throwing those out so quickly.
That's right, and like you've said, managing your debt is a continuous process. And when should you do it? Every time you pay your bills, because you're doing it anyway.
Right.
You look at each one at a time, and you make sure that it's following the plan. If something goes wrong or changes, you have to adjust the plan. That's why it's important to know the fundamentals.
Should you try to have no charge card debt?
Oh yeah. If
Okay.
you can pay with cash and have zero debt,
Okay.
that's the way to go.
I think a lot of people out there think that having charge card debt is vogue. It's in. It's no big deal. That, so what? It's at 5.9 or 6 or 7 or 8. It's a little bit, no big deal. But you should really try to have at least no charge card debt.
Well, if you have charge card debt, you just have to realize that the interest you're paying, which is thousands of dollars, is the fee to have that debt.
Right.
Like a fee for buying anything else. If you think it's worth it to spend $2,000 for interest instead of spending $2,000 for a new deck for your backyard, well, that's how you choose to spend your money.
Right. But plan it out. How much is the debt going to cost you? When are you going to get it paid off based on what you're paying?
Exactly.
Or what you can afford to pay. Okay, after take action, track credit card and loan offers. I know we pretty much hit that already as far as looking out for other credit card and loan offers. Next, don't hesitate to close credit card accounts.
Well, don't be hasty in closing credit card accounts.
Okay, don't be hasty in closing credit card accounts.
Right, because when you cut up your card, a lot of planners suggest just cutting up all your credit cards, closing all your accounts. But see, if you're hasty in doing that, and when you cut up your cards, you're cutting out your options. Once you get that down to a zero balance, as long as there's no annual fee, you take that card, you throw it in the credit card graveyard. It's a little file I have that's loaded with credit cards that I never use.
Okay. And hopefully that there's no annual fee, because if there is, you could have 10 charge cards at $50 a year annual fee. You're paying $500, which is a week's pay for most people.
Well, as soon as I get the fee, if I see it there, I'll call them and say waive the fee or I'm gone. And except for one case, I've had them all waived. And the one that didn't, they were gone. And I have plenty of other ones to turn to.
Interesting.
But if the one card that I have, say, a debt on raises its rate, I got all these other ones to call. I call, hey, you got a deal going? And you'll be surprised to find that, oh yeah, there's this transfer deal, 6.9 until December if you take advantage of it. You say, well, I didn't get that in the mail. Oh yeah, well, it's available.
Fantastic.
So if you cut up your cards real fast, you might be at the mercy of one bank that's zinging you for a huge rate.
Especially if you have bad credit, you might be even have your back against the wall, because if you've clipped up all your charge cards, you have no more charge cards, you have a bad credit, and then you go to apply for a new charge card because you clipped up all your old charge cards, you really screwed yourself.
That's exactly what's going on.
Okay.
Right?
Last thing, pay on time, you say.
Right.
Pay on time. That's important for everything.
That's the most important thing. In fact, if you have to borrow money from other credit cards to pay on time, I would strongly suggest that you do it. Because what will happen is, if you're late once, some of these credit card companies will say your accounts was late, your rate goes from that 6.9 offer to 19 or 20%.
Great.
And if that happens, you're finished. So paying on time can be the worst thing. And like we were talking about before with mortgages, you might apply for, say, a refinance, and this happened to a friend of mine. He missed one payment when he applied for a refinance, which would have saved him thousands of dollars. They rejected him and he had to wait another couple of years. If he would have just cash advanced the money to pay his mortgage and then paid that back, the fee and the cash, all the fees concerned with that cash advance would have been less than the late fee he got hit with for being late. Plus, he would have saved thousands more dollars on the refinance.
Good point. Will you hang out with us for about 5 or 10 more minutes and tell us about some of these charge card deals around the country?
Sure.
Great.
When we be back, we'll be right back with Scott Bilker and showing you how to get better deals on charge cards, so stay right with us. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to In the Money. Our program tonight, if you're tuning in late, you haven't missed too much, but let's get right down to it. Managing a charge card debt. We have Scott Bilker with us, who has written a great book, and it's called Credit Card and Debt Management, Maximizing Your Borrowing Power. And Scott has this book available. You can call up a toll-free number to order up the book, 1-800-205-8254. Is the phone number. Again, it's on your screen, 1-800-205-8254. By the way, it's $19.95 is the cost, certainly well worth it, and the shipping is waived, which is $3 for In the Money viewers. Let's go right to our phones and get on with Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How can we help you?
Okay, I've done a lot of the mistakes that he said not to do, like I cut up my credit cards. I was one time I had like $20,000 in debt, but I've paid everything off.
Great.
But now my problem is that I can't even get a loan. Every time I go to the bank, It's like I was late with my payments, and it's just very difficult. Now that I've paid all my debts, is there any way of really cleaning up my bad credit that I have?
Any way of cleaning up your bad credit?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay, well, as far as cleaning up your bad credit, what you've done in the past, you've done, and that's going to be there. You can't
Right.
really change that. But as far as getting new loans, what I would suggest you do is take some cash, like $500, go to a bank that you've been dealing with your checking account, and ask for a secured credit card application. And with this kind of credit card, you deposit money in the bank, and you ask for a credit card against that amount that you have deposited, and they're going to hold that money, so they're sure that that you're a good risk, and then they're going to give you a credit line, maybe $500 or $1,000, and this way you get a major credit card, and you can start rebuilding your credit history by paying on time. Don't take the card and go crazy. Buy something, pay it off. Buy something, pay it off. Take other money, open another secured credit card account in a different bank, and get a couple.
And make sure that banks are reporting to the credit agencies.
Oh, they do. Everything's always reported.
They do? Okay,
Oh,
great.
they know
Oh,
how
yes, they
tall
do.
you are, your eye color.
Okay, great. Thanks for your question, Elizabeth. Glad we were able to help out. Let's go on to Bob, our next caller. Bob, how are you, Bob? How can we help?
How you doing?
Good.
In terms of the saving interest overall, okay, I have a situation right now where I have $5,000 in my savings account, and I owe about $5,500 in credit card debt, and I also have a mortgage loan on my home, which 28 years remain at 7 3/4. What would I be better off doing? Paying $5,000 towards the additional principal on the mortgage, or $5,000 towards the credit card, which is charging me a 9% rate?
Okay, in your case, you want to take your money and you want to pay back the credit cards because you're getting a tax benefit with your mortgage, so your 7% rate is going to be less than that once you take that into consideration, your
Absolutely.
tax. So you're really getting a little better than 7%. And I outline in my book in the back, I present a table that shows you what the credit card rate would be when compared to a home equity line or a mortgage.
Great
And you want to take that money and pay back your credit cards. It makes no sense to keep that money in your savings account, as you've recognized. I mean, just to ask means that you know inside that that's a good plan, and you should do that plan right now, because you can always get the money back from your credit cards if you need it in a real emergency.
Yeah, don't clip up the charge card. You always have a cash emergency area to go into.
Exactly.
Okay, great call and question, Bob. Next caller up, Mordecai. Hi, Mordecai.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. How can we help?
I have, it seems I paid, after 30 days a number of times. First of all, I was wondering, how do I get rid of that? And second, I have like around $15,000 in IRAs. I'm paying like 23% for credit cards. Does it pay to lose that 10% taking out before 59 and paying up the credit card?
Well, that's a complicated question.
Okay,
but
it's a good question. But basically, you've got kind of a two-faceted question here. Is number one, how to clean up those late payments.
Yes.
So it sounds like to me that you have a bad credit statement because you've had so many late payments after 30 days. How can we help them with that part?
Well, the only way you can clean up your credit if you've been late is to start paying on time. You can't erase things that you've done that were bad, like being late. There's a number of companies that claim to be able to do this, and some of their practices are illegal. But the truth is, you can't change what you've done. If it's the truth, it's there. But if you start to pay on time and you fulfill your obligations to your creditors, you will quickly be a big hit in their computer program that identifies those people, and they'll be sending you those good credit deals immediately.
Okay. Second part of his question, which I'm going to help you along with here, Mordecai. You have $50,000 in IRA. Should you take, it sounds to me, some of that money out and pay off your charge cards? Well, if you're below age 59 and a half, you got a problem because not only are you going to pay a 10% penalty on your IRA, but taking it out, but you're going to pay ordinary income tax. So that could be as much as 30-40%. So certainly probably wouldn't pay to do that. However, you might investigate maybe converting part of that IRA to a Roth IRA. And at least in a 5-year time period, you might be able to get at some of that money. It all depends on your age, though. So, just investigate that area. You have to have that money in a Roth IRA for at least 5 years. When you take it out, 59 and a half, so I don't know your age when you call. But anyway, at least we answered some of the question there, and good luck to you. Definitely stop using the charge cards and start paying them off. That would be sound advice right off the bat.
Yeah, 23% is very high.
Right.
There's so many deals better than that. That's robbery for someone who pays decently.
Okay, great. Let's go to an email. I am a single mother with some past credit problems. I'd like to purchase a home, but no banks want anything to do with me. What can I do to improve my credit? I feel like I'm trapped in a corner. I hope you can help. Sounds like we've been over this question before.
Right. Again, you want to try to get some secured credit cards and start building your credit history up. But I'm under the philosophy that every bank wants to make a profit. So if you pay on time, you're going to look profitable to them. So eventually you'll be able to do that. Just keep applying to different banks. There's thousands of banks out there. Someone wants to make money from you.
Even if Vera can go and apply to a secured credit card, deposit $500, like you said before, she can start rebuilding some of that credit right off the bat.
And she can apply for mortgages to thousands of banks. And even now on the internet, there's plenty of banks you can talk to and find out what they can do for you.
Fantastic. Okay, again, if people want to order Scott's book, Credit Card and Debt Management, dial up 1-800-205-8254. Great book, a great planning book, at least for us financial planners, to help our clients get our clients out of credit card payments and manage their debt a little bit more wisely. If you need it, it's available to you, and Scott has agreed to have the company waive $3 for In the Money viewers. I thank you all, and thank you very much, Scott, for coming on.
Pleasure's been all mine, JJ. It was great being on your show
tonight.
Take care.
For Scott Bilker and myself, take care, be well, invest your time, and manage your debt wisely.